Right, welcome back, everyone. Happy Friday. This is your host, Ludo Farage, founder and CEO of New Camp. And with me, I have Eric Olafson. Hi, Eric. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing pretty great, Ludo.
All right. So, we're going to have a full hour to go over your journey, how you became a software engineer. But before that, I just want to remind everyone that you can ask your questions online. We are streaming live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. There was a little snafu. Typically, the show starts at 3 p.m., but today we're starting at 2. So I hope you're not missing it. I hope you're able to join live and not recorded. I hope you're not clicking on this and it's 3 p.m. and you're like, what's going on? But if you're live, if you're with us, ask your question in the chat. Eric and I will look at it and answer your questions. Also, you can join live and be on camera and with your mic. I'm looking for the URL. There we go. You can follow this link and join us live. And we'll actually have you with your phone, with your camera, having a conversation with Eric and I. And again, ask any question that you may want. All right. So, Eric, where are you dialing in from?
Yeah, so I'm from, I work in Dallas most of the time, but my wife is a travel nurse. And so she took a contract here in Boise, Idaho. So currently I'm in Boise.
Okay. How do you like it? How different is it from Texas? And you were
I
in
love
Dallas, right?
I love it. Yeah. So both my wife and I are actually originally from Idaho. We've been living in Dallas. We've been married for about 5 years. And ever
Hmm.
since we got married, we moved to Dallas. Love Dallas, but it's great being close to family.
Yeah.
Both of us love the mountains, so it's
Oh,
good.
that's brilliant. Are you
Feels
are
it
you
feels like
skiing? Are you a
oh, yeah.
skier? Oh yeah.
Anything outdoors, whether it's water skiing, snow skiing, hiking, backpacking, any of that stuff. We love it.
Oh, that's cool. My kid is 17 years old and he's looking, for college and stuff. And he's like, I want to be close to a mountain because he loves skiing. So I didn't think about Boise as an option, but I guess maybe it is, right?
Oh,
We're
yeah, yeah.
thinking about Salt Lake. We're thinking about Colorado, of course, Boulder. Okay, we'll add it to the list. So, Eric, you've been with New Camp since 2019, when we were just starting to expand, and we opened in Dallas, and that was back in the days of being able to deliver in-person workshops in Dallas. How can you tell us how it was like? I mean, to have your students on and seeing them on Saturdays. Can you share a little bit about that? And then we'll go over your own journey. But that amazed me to see that you actually lived through that.
Yeah, you're making me feel like an OG right now, Ludo. No, it was fun. It was definitely a different experience, but I feel like new campus came such a long way, and just students are really, and not just new camp, but I feel like people participate well enough online now. Like that's just became such a part of our lives
Yeah,
that it's not too different anymore. But it was a ton of fun doing online, or not online, but in-person classes.
yeah.
Um, it was fun.
At the
Yeah.
time, we were in the co-working space called NOD.
Oh,
Nod, Nod. Did you get? Were you one of the people with the keys to get in, and or did you have to wait for someone else? I remember we always had issues with, okay, who's going to be able to get in on Saturday morning?
so I can't remember the guy's name, but there was someone else who always had keys, and
Yeah.
he always had it open for us, so there was
Okay.
never any issues. But
Cool.
that was definitely a pain that he
Yeah.
bummer, but and that's
Uh,
something too. It's nice having online classes. So many things you don't have to worry about driving. You don't
yeah.
have to worry about like any of those kind of hiccups. Online stuff is
Yeah.
definitely.
Instructors and students. I mean, we'll get texts in the morning from students saying, "Hey, my car didn't start, so I can't show up." Let's say a few say hi, folks. Hey, Jose, good to see you. We have Seni. Salut, Seni from Guinea. Uh, Merci beaucoup de te joindre à nous. Thank you for joining us, Seni. And then we have folks from Hawaii as well. Wow, that's pretty international right now. And oh, actually, Seni is in Tunisia right now. Okay, so Eric, what can you tell us about your life before getting into software engineering? What were you doing? What did you graduate in? If you did, can you actually start at the very beginning of your professional journey, and then we'll walk back up to now and how you became a software engineer.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a long story. I've bounced around from a lot of different things. Originally, I went to school, I was pre-med. I really
Mhm.
liked medicine, but towards about my junior year, I actually had a medical complication myself. Um, had an operation that I actually didn't even need, left me
Wow.
with a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth for medicine. And the more that I did shadowing and stuff, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And while I was in college, I was actually doing door-to-door sales for just to pay my way through school, right?
Oh
So I
wow.
was one of those guys that would go knocking on people's doors, annoying you probably when you were sitting down to eat with your family and just be like, hey, my pest control truck is in the neighborhood tomorrow. If I can get you done with everyone else, it's going to be half price. Like that's everyone's pitch. But I ended up actually doing that after I graduated from college because I
Yeah.
was making pretty good money and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I actually have a degree in exercise science. And there's not really a whole lot you can do with that
What
unless you
is
go to.
exercise science actually? What is it? What defines as exercise science? Science,
So
exercise science.
yeah, that's a good question. So we just learn primarily about the body, how different stressors affect it, best forms of exercise for specific people in specific
Oh, I
circumstances and
see.
stuff like that.
So it could be PE. It's
That
PE. It's just the spelling of PE.
it's a little bit different. Like in my head, when you're thinking about PE, you're more so thinking about like a teacher, and
Yeah,
that's a completely different degree, completely different
I
route
gotcha.
than what I was.
Yeah.
But the people that do the degree that I had, they're usually going to some type of graduate school, whether that's PA, med school,
Hmm.
PT, something like that. That's usually
Okay.
what it
So you were still in the medical field to some extent. I mean,
is. Mhm.
still very close to the body,
Yep,
to
yep,
the
exactly,
healthcare, I would say, or taking care of your health in some ways.
exactly.
Were you a
Yeah,
good? So you must have been a very good door-to-door seller. Were you on the commission when you were doing that?
it's 100% commission.
Oh,
And
is it?
honestly, if you can deal with people just telling you no to your face 100
Yeah.
times a day, there's some pretty good money to be made in it. And I know a lot of guys and girls that have made a ton of money and actually been able to like retire after like 10 years of doing that.
No way.
But it's oh yeah, but
Wow.
it's just a lot of hard work, and it's just emotionally super
I was gonna
draining.
say it must be super taxing, right? Yeah.
And honestly, and that's a good segue into the next part of my career. So I was doing that for a while, and my
Mhm.
wife could totally tell I was just not myself. She was
Oh
like, "When
yeah.
you come home, you're just not as happy as you once were. You're just so
Mhm.
tired. Like it's just you're your best self at work." And then I get Eric version number two.
Yeah.
That
Well, this
it's
this
just not.
type of job, it must be about, manipulation at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean,
Well, I
to
mean,
be
it's
a good
selling. It's
yeah,
selling. You're either selling or you're being sold, kind of
yeah,
a thing, right?
yeah.
So manipulation, I don't know if I agree with the connotation of that
Mhm.
specifically for the situation, because each salesman can portray their product or service in a
It's
particular
true.
light. I'm
It's
saying
true.
you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to manipulate it, but you definitely can accentuate the pros
Yeah.
and then kind of downplay the cons. Maybe that's manipulation. And honestly,
Yeah,
that was
you're right, actually. The way I was thinking about that because of the context and the fact that you're coming and unattended, or you are not expected. There's so much more work, to get into someone's thinking about buying something.
yeah,
That, but yeah, I mean, you can do it right, or you can do it,
yeah. Which
yeah, the wrong way, I guess.
one thing I'll say that was pretty cool is they actually taught us, believe it or not, a ton of psychology in
Yeah,
door-to-door sales
yeah.
so that we could And again, maybe this borderline's a little bit more of manipulation, but there's a lot of subtle things that we were taught. Like, for
Mhm.
example, you're telling someone about some of the products or services that you have, you slowly nod your head, and then they'll
Yeah.
start to do the same, and subliminally,
Look, I'm
there's
doing it. I'm doing it.
exactly it, yeah. So there's some kind of cool things with that with sales
Yeah.
that I learned. But at the end of the day, I kind of started just not feeling great about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And not everyone, but a lot of the people that were making a lot of money in it were borderline manipulation. And that's why I was just like, this, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. So there came to a point, I'd been talking with some different friends, and I had a friend who went to a boot camp. He told me about it. I think I dabbled in Python for maybe a week, and I was
Wow,
like,
just
and
a week.
not a whole lot, and it was really just like maybe 30 minutes a day, just very, very basic stuff. And I just remember telling my wife, like, "Man, this is really cool." And then
Oh
I
yeah.
I read I read some stuff online just about the software industry. I can't remember exactly who said it, but someone said how, like, software is eating the world,
Yeah.
like, everything is moving towards tech.
Yeah.
And that's when, for me, I was just like, "Okay, I wanna be in this industry. This is really cool." Even though I had 0 knowledge about it, absolutely
You
no
had
knowledge.
zero. You didn't do a little bit of computer science at school before that, or were you kind of a PC, or were you, kind of a nerdy PC like I am, playing with computers? No, no. Okay. Wow.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing. And it was very
That's really
apparent
cool.
too when I started my boot camp,
Oh yeah.
how behind I was from everyone else. Like, I remember our instructor opening up the terminal, and I'd never seen that before, and I was like, "Oh, whoa,
Yeah.
this guy's a wizard, like, this is really cool." And then
That's
everyone was just like,
brilliant.
"Yeah, this is easy stuff." But
So you
anyways,
must be you must be also quite talented, because just learning for about a week before starting a boot camp is quite unprecedented, I think. And having the result that we'll talk about, but being where you are right now, I mean, it's not that everyone can do it so successfully. So, but tell us about it. So you learn for a week Python, a few hours here and there, um, and so then you decide to join a coding bootcamp full time at the time, I'm guessing.
yeah,
So,
yep.
and were you employed, or did you have to quit your job? What was the situation for you at the time?
I did quit my job,
Wow.
So, and I have to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
'Cause I wanna, especially after what I said before about not manipulating. So, I dabbled in Python for a week before making my decision to do a boot camp. I didn't
Oh,
necessarily
okay.
start it after a week,
Oh,
but
okay.
I made a decision after a week, "'Kay, I'm gonna do a boot camp," and my buddy, he did Dev Mountain.
Hmm.
Uh, I think they're out of, like, Salt Lake or something is where they're
Yeah.
headquartered.
Yeah.
They had a branch in Dallas, and it was kind of a crazy coincidence because they actually had a billboard in Dallas. As I was
Oh, they had a
doing
billboard. Oh,
they had a
wow.
billboard. They had a billboard in Dallas, and so I was like, "This is too crazy." So I ended up calling them up, and I think I started maybe, like, a month after I made the decision to do a boot camp. So
Okay.
that's
And so did you learn more during that month? Did you prepare yourself? How did that go?
I should have learned a lot more to put it, but I was still working. I wanted to make as
Yeah.
much money as I could
Yeah.
up until I started my boot camp,
Yeah.
because we were when I started, we were relying solely on my wife's income, which she's a
Oh yeah.
nurse,
Jeez. Yeah.
and so and I did a little bit, but not as much as I wish I would have, in preparation for the boot camp. Because in my head, I was like, "I'm paying so much money, like, I'm gonna be there all day, every day. I'll be able to learn what I need to there in the moment." Which, again, if I could redo it, I wish I would have prepared a lot better. But
Yeah, but you were right in managing your priorities, right? I mean, up until you are in the boot camp, you have a job, you need to earn the money to pay for the boot camp, and then you'll be ready when you're in the boot camp. Kind of makes sense. Let's say hi to a few folks that are joining. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining from New York. Igo, thanks for joining as well. And Jubair, Jubair is here as well. Don't forget, you can dial in if you want to ask questions to Eric or myself. Follow the link here, and you'll actually appear in my window here. And maybe actually we'll bring you onto the show and ask your question live. And I see someone else from Texas.
Hey, Texas.
Juan. All right. Juan, we need to have you on the show at some point. You're hiding from me. You have to come. You have to be on the show. All right. So you're starting Dev Mountain in Dallas,
Yeah.
um, and you've quit your job. It's going to be full time, super intense. How long was it going to be?
Ooh, I think the full boot camp was like 3.5 months,
Three and a half
something like
months. So
that.
tell us about this experience. Tell us about
Oh,
how you felt about it. Everything. What
it
happened
was
during the day, at night? Like, were you able to go back home, or were you sleeping on the floors over there?
it, it kind of was sometimes like we would fall asleep in our chairs because we were up at like 6 a.m. trying to do stuff. And
No
then sometimes
way. Up until
like
6 a.m. Yeah.
well, we would like wake up at 6 a.m. trying to
Oh, yeah.
learn stuff, and then we would be in our chairs until like 8 p.m. nodding off. So
Mhm.
the the Dev Mountain campus that I went to, they had the very basement of an old, I think it was just an old apartment complex there in Dallas.
Mhm.
So we actually had rooms there in this apartment complex for us. So we each had like a roommate. We had a little kitchen. I think that there were like 3 rooms, 6 roommates per each apartment. So essentially, what we would do is we would wake up, eat some breakfast really fast, go down, start preparation for the day, and then classes started. If I remember right, it's 8 or 9 in the morning.
Yes.
And then we had classes from then until I think it was noon, where we just had an instructor tell us about different stuff, whether that was just basic JavaScript, which
Mhm.
really wasn't too long. They did a little bit of JavaScript, and then we went into just everything CERN stack, SQL, Express, React, and Node, right? Um,
And it
and
was in
then
2018, I think, right? So all those, I mean, React version at the time, and yeah, all of that. Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. So we didn't do uh, any type of functional components whatsoever.
Oh,
It
that's
was
right.
all,
Oh, so
all class.
you learned it the hard way,
Yeah, yeah,
object
yeah.
oriented, and yeah,
Which I think is good for
yeah.
people to learn that way because there's so much. If you want a job in the industry, it's so much harder just learning straight from functional components.
Mhm.
And then you see object components, right? Class-based components, and
Yeah.
you're like, "What the heck is this? What are all these different lifecycle methods that you're using?" But anyways, yeah,
Yeah,
it
there's,
was
there's a lot of diverse opinion on that. I mean, as you know, in our
yeah,
curriculum, we've had Redux and object components for a long time, and it will be, and you've seen that, you've taught that course, right? It will
oh
be
yeah,
so hard for students to internalize all of those concepts all at once. That functional component makes it so easy to implement. I don't know. I myself, I think nowadays you actually don't have to understand object-oriented programming that much. Uh, it's there, but you can actually go around and place your code where it's supposed to be and make it work without necessarily understanding all the nuances of object-oriented. And of course, as I said, that it's diverging from what computer science is teaching those days, right? I mean, it's all about that. I don't know. What do you think? Like, is object-oriented programming still important?
that's a good question. I would say, is it still important? Yes.
Hmm.
But in my experience, and specifically speaking about junior devs,
Yeah,
speaking to the new camp audience, none of that is as important as just being hungry, right?
yeah,
Like
right.
hungry to look like your
Mm,
potential employer isn't going to look at your code and be like, "Oh, I see that you know object-oriented programming, but you have absolutely nothing in GitHub with functional components in React," right?
mm.
Like we're not gonna continue anymore in the interview
Yeah,
process because no, they're gonna say
no,
if you
that.
have dots all on your GitHub
Yeah,
and they can tell that you have an attitude of like, hey, I'm hungry to learn, I want to be in this industry. Those are the kind of people that they really care about. And
yeah. I know you're right. You're right.
either way,
You can always learn at some point.
exactly. Either way, you
Yeah.
can pick up functional, you can pick up object oriented, whatever you need. each company is different in what they code in, and like there's a spot for anyone, whatever
Yeah.
as long as again you're hungry for it, right?
Yeah, and it's a very good point. And I've seen some articles online of people debating. Some say people saying, "Hey, object-oriented programming is dead." And I personally remember learning about programming and learning object-oriented programming in C, not even C++, but just pure C, and I was fascinated by it. But it's true that there's a lot of boilerplate code that you have to create just to do a few things. You have to create your object and the methods, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Functional programming is so just straightforward. And you are thinking about functions easy. I mean, it's primarily you're thinking functions. You're not necessarily thinking objects when you're programming. You need something to do something for you, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you can pick it up. The thing is, not learning object-oriented programming won't prevent you from becoming a web developer, and won't prevent you from learning it afterwards, if you want to. So okay, let's go back to you. You're in Dev Mountain, having like blending days and nights and weekends. How did you feel? I mean, were you a good developer? Were you average? Did you have to work extra hard to understand everything? And tell us about, when you finished the coding bootcamp, which situation were you in at that moment in time,
Yeah, so
mentally, and even from a job standpoint? How long did it take you? I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
yeah, so um, a little bit about my Dev Mountain experience. So the first little while, I just remember thinking like, okay, this is all making sense. Like, I feel like I understand the concepts. Implementing it in code and actually getting everything to work was a little bit tough.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe 3 or 4 days, and we had in my group, I think we started with like 15 students. There was one girl who she was already a developer. She
Oh
was a
wow.
developer,
Yeah.
and she was in the boot camp, and she had said after a week, she ended up quitting and just said, and I can't even, I was so new at the time, maybe she didn't even know JavaScript. I can't remember, but she
Mm-hmm.
had just said, this is way too fast paced for me. So I'm out. And I
Wow.
remember at that point thinking like, I am probably way too in over my head. And it was a big, like we had to put down like $10,000 to do this boot camp, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a big financial decision, and you had like a certain amount of time to quit if you wanted your money
Yeah,
back.
that's
And
right.
so, and it was a pretty short time, if I remember right. I think we had like a week or two. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
thinking and considering really strongly, like, do I need to
Oh,
leave?
just a week in. Just a week in, you were wondering maybe I did the wrong thing.
Yeah, yeah, and not necessarily like I felt like I was again understanding the concepts,
Yeah.
but not necessarily being able to apply it really well yet.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, okay, like I can kind of get like what loops are doing and why we may want to use them, but actually
Yeah.
being able to write a loop correctly was still hard, right? That's how new I
Yeah, no, that
was.
makes sense. Yeah, I mean
And
that's the very beginning of things until you work on your project, I guess.
yeah,
So hey, folks, if you want to ask your questions, please go ahead. Seni is convincing here. Thank you. But AJ is here as well. But yeah, ask any question, and Eric and I will look at them and answer them online. So let's fast forward. You're graduating from your boot camp.
okay,
Uh, how long did it take you to get a job, and what was your first job at that moment?
good question. So I think I graduated in November, right?
Okay,
And I actually ended
2018
up
or 2018 to still, or 2019?
20 20
2018.
2018. So I graduated 2018. I did actually continue doing sales just to
Oh
make
yeah,
money. And
yeah.
then I was doing as much networking as possible. I ended up so I just mass applied like crazy
Hmm.
to any company that was hiring a developer, right? Um, and I got a ton of no's back. Most companies
Yeah.
just ghosted me entirely, which I don't like, but I totally understand. But I ended up getting to the point where I just ended up printing out probably like 100 resumes. And any company that was hiring, I went to the office because most of
Oh,
the
you
time
went there. Yeah.
when I did sales, for the most part,
Yeah.
it was usually during the evening. That's when I could meet with people.
Hmm.
I did solar panel sales, right? So if someone wanted a solar panel on the roof, that's what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Um, I would go to their house at night, and anyways, during the day, I would go in to businesses and just drop off my resume. So I dropped off my resume at a place called Mizzen in Maine.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me
they're
check out.
men,
Like, I'm opening your LinkedIn at the same time just to
but
follow
yeah,
you. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
a they're a men's shirt company. In fact, this is actually Mizzen in Maine shirt. I got a couple free ones.
Nice.
Uh, But anyways, I was an intern there for a little while, and they're an e-commerce company. All of the code that we wrote was actually in Liquid, so they're a Shopify-based company,
Yeah.
which it was fun to do that stuff. I learned a lot of stuff that was completely outside of the realm of what I learned at my boot camp. We did nothing with React, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it was a great learning experience. And then I ended up finishing that. It was just a temporary internship. I finished that up, and then I went back to sales. I was doing sales, and then I actually ended up taking a job. This was right about when COVID had
Yeah.
started. I took a job because I knew it was gonna be kinda hard, or at least I figured it was gonna be really hard to get a dev job when COVID all happened. Like,
I
companies were
see.
probably gonna be slowing down. So I worked at
Oh,
Micro Center for a little bit,
Micro Center.
just selling, yeah, tech stuff.
So,
Um,
so it wasn't a smooth journey by any
no, no,
stretch.
not at all,
It
not at
was,
all.
and what I like to go back to is you've done something that a lot of junior developers or coding bootcamp graduates find pretty hard to do. A lot of us, I'll say, are introverts, but you had an experience in putting yourself out there, and instead of just clicking apply on LinkedIn, which goes nowhere most of the time, you really, apply your experience in going to those companies. And were you able to meet with folks, like, impromptu? Hey, I'm here. Can I talk to someone? How did you have that type of experience as well there?
All the time, all the time.
That's
So,
brilliant.
a lot of companies that, again, this is pre-COVID, so it's probably
Yeah.
different now. But a lot of companies, I think, could see that I really was
Yeah.
hungry. Like, I had proof in my
Yeah.
GitHub that I was coding every day. Not that they saw that, but, like, just the sheer fact that I showed up in
If you
person.
just show
And
up,
I was like,
yeah.
"Hey," exactly, exactly. "Hey, I'm here. I really wanna
Yeah.
learn." And I more so approached it like and every company that I went to, I did a little bit of research, and I was like, "Hey, I love X about
Oh
what
yeah.
your company's doing. I would love to be a part of it. Here's my resume. What do I need to do so that I can be a part of this?" Kind of a thing,
That's
right?
huge. That's huge. And those type of engagements, they may not pay off, the day off, the month off, but maybe 6 months later, all of a sudden someone pings you and it's like, hey,
So
remember?
that's exactly how I ended up getting the job where I'm at now.
There you
So
go.
I ended up I can't remember exactly how, so I had a first job after my internship. I got a
Yeah.
job at a place called Next Rate Studios, which was an amazing small startup company. It was just, I think, like 5 or 6 of us were just writing code for one application, and it was a great experience. But I had messaged someone, I so the company that I'm working now is Dialexa, and I
Yeah.
messaged like 3 or 4 engineers there saying, "Hey, I'd love to work for this company. What do I need to do to work there?" And a
Yeah.
couple of them actually ended up submitting my resume to HR, right? They didn't hire me right away, but a year later, I'd been working at this other place for a year. I get a call up from HR and they said, "Hey, I know it's been a while. You submitted your resume a while ago. We're really interested in hiring you." And I got a big pay raise. Absolutely
Oh,
love the
that's
company that
huge.
I'm working for now.
That's
Yeah.
huge.
So it's
No, but
that
it's
hard.
actually that's how you differentiate yourself in the market, right? The market is tight, but everything you can do to just go beyond the apply on LinkedIn is gonna be super helpful. We have Henry who's just joined us here. Henry, what I like to request is for folks to show have their webcam on, to bring you onto the floor and ask your question. So if you want, try to switch your camera on, Henry, and then we'll bring you on. In the meantime, I've seen a few questions, I think, that I'd love for us to answer. Oh, there we go. I don't think that's a question, but I'll take it. From Chris. Thanks for creating a very special program curriculum. A normal boot camp was not an option for me. Well, really, really happy, Chris, that it's working for you. Glad to have you with us. And then this is a question from Henry. Well, Henry, the person I think that's trying to join us. Again, Henry, if you want to ask your question and have a conversation, switch your camera on. What plan do you have in place for international student to take part in this program? So we're fully online at this time. And so if you're international, you can actually sign up like anyone else. And I think I've seen you, Henry. I think you're from Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. I think you mentioned that somewhere in the chat. So you can actually join any of the time zone that we have. So we have 3 time zones: Eastern, Central, Pacific. Eastern may work the best for you, but you actually have good options depending on what time that is going to be for you in your time zone. The major issue potentially is the price point. Although if you're interested in UCamp, I'm assuming that's because we have one of the lowest. But I know sometimes even, in USD dollars compared to the Nigerian, I don't know what the currency is in Nigeria, but I know sometimes it's still quite of a steep price difference. So if you can afford it, that's awesome. You can just pay by card. Recently, we actually, we're going to announce pretty soon other ways of paying that you're going to be able to leverage. But yeah, you can just sign up. And if you can pay by card, you're in. All right. So, we have Ehab as well. So, all right. Hey, Ehab, I see you. I'm going to bring you onto the floor if you're ready for your question. All right. You ready for that, Eric?
Let's do it.
Ehab, can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. We can hear you, but unfortunately, your connection is pretty bad. Apparently, we cannot see your video anymore.
Oh, let me try again.
All right. We'll bring you back, right? Just try to join again for with a better connection. All right. We'll try again. Oh, there is. So you went above and beyond. Can you tell us a little bit about your mental state? I mean, I imagine having gone through the boot camp and not necessarily getting into that position straight away, but having kind of highs and downs, right? Like you get an internship, then you don't have a job. How did you cope with that? In some ways, and I know a lot of people go through that themselves, right? Once they graduate, it's a long journey. What did you do to continue to practice? What did you do to tell you that you had to continue practicing? What kept you going in some ways?
So I think we hear this quite a bit nowadays, but like, I played a lot of sports and stuff growing up, and I was always told, like, control what you can control, and what you can't, don't worry about. So I essentially just focused on the things that I could control. I went to meetups, increased my skill set, did practice interviews all the time, coded with friends, right? Worked on group projects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I knew people that were getting jobs in software. And so I was patient in just thinking like, okay, like, as long as I'm moving forward, at some point, this will work out for me.
That's great. So you were continuously optimistic and working towards that. Hey, we're seeing AJ and Ehab. So AJ, I'm going to bring you onto the floor so that you can ask your question. And be careful. I think you're driving as well. Hey, AJ.
Yes.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, good.
Good.
We can hear
Yeah.
you. You don't need to look at your phone. We're seeing you. Just eyes on the road. Eyes on the road.
Okay. Yeah. Hey. So, thanks for having me on. Definitely love your program. I've looked at probably 20, 30 different boot camps. I followed Don the developer, great guy. I was kind of curious. So, I definitely feel like New Camp has a lot to offer, especially with their programs. I was kind of curious from your experience, and then also your experience, who just got into the or Eric. I mean, what do you feel New Camp boot camps might lack a little bit, and that we can make up in the interim while we're taking like a camp? Like, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Go for it,
If
Eric.
anything.
Pretend
I
I'm not
lost it.
here.
I lost you guys.
Yeah, so a couple things that I tell any of my students that I teach through New Camp is that you always
Oh,
need
did I
to
lose you?
be learning with.
No, you're here. We can hear you still. You're still here, AJ. Go for it,
Can you
Eric.
hear me, AJ? You good? I don't know.
That's
Well,
okay. But
just to answer his question.
Yeah, you can still answer the
just to answer
question.
it. A couple of the things that I think New Camp students really need to work on. Number one is just JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. I actually usually recommend any of my students learn JavaScript on the side. I actually
had to take a phone call. Yeah.
All right,
I
go for
have,
it. I had to remove AJ, but go for it. It's a great question. So please continue to answer it.
Yeah, anyways, I have a file that I give to all of my students that has different teachers that I really like on YouTube, Udemy courses that you can take concurrently. But my opinion, JavaScript is probably the number one thing that not really any boot camp teaches very much in depth. I think that's probably the biggest one. And then number two, I actually wish that we would do something a little bit more with like group work. And I don't mean necessarily like working as a group to do the workshop assignment, but being able to show in GitHub, hey, I worked on this project with 2 or 3 other devs. We were able to work with merge conflicts. We were able to, divvy out the work and be able to architecture our app so that we were all able to get stuff done, but not interfere with everyone else.
Yeah.
So those are kind of things that I kind of tell my student. And usually what I say, which I think is just as good as doing work in the boot camp, is just, I mean, especially if you're doing a full-time job and you're doing New Camp, you're probably not going to be able to do a group project while you're in the boot camp, right? You're probably maxed out. But as soon as you're done with New Camp, keep in touch with a lot of your friends and fellow students. Like, you can totally do a group project after the fact. And I think that's maybe even better in a lot of ways, because you could say, hey, I worked with this guy. It was completely outside of the boot camp, or, these 3, 4 other people, and we made this cool application.
Hackathons for that as well, I will add. I totally agree with you. But I mean, signing up for hackathons, like every weekend, you do a hackathon and you have that group experience. This is great. Hey, so Hihab, I see that you're joining us. I'm going to bring you onto the floor, Hihab. All right. Hey, how are you doing?
Fine. How are you? Yeah, I'm already taking the boot camp. I took the fundamental, and I took the right now in Node.js, and I'm gonna take the back end.
Oh wow!
I just
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm after the.
Oh.
Like, you make it more like 6 weeks.
Hey, Hihab, I'm sorry. We have a really hard time hearing what you're saying again. I really apologize for that. We couldn't get your question. If you don't mind, Hihab, if you just ask your question in the chat, and we'll cover it with Eric. But yeah, the connection is not working. I've been told that Restream, which is what we're using, is really hungry in terms of connection. So sorry for that, Hihab. I'm going to remove you, and but please ask your question on the chat.
All right.
All right. But quite impressive, though. I mean, he apparently did 4 weeks development, web development fundamentals, and then just finishing up full stack, and apparently is moving on to the Python bootcamp right after that. So, okay, let's go back to you, Eric. So it took a while. You went above and beyond, I would say, to find a position. Tell us what you're doing now then. Tell us what your position is now. 2022, it's like 4 years, after you graduated.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Good question. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to backtrack a little bit. One thing I
Oh, of
just
course,
want
go
to
for it.
say, one quick thing I want to say to all the new camp students. And this is one thing I actually wanted to say about my Dev Mountain experience, but I
Yeah.
didn't say it. Don't compare yourself to other people. Like, you have people from so many different backgrounds. And that was one thing, like, I remember thinking, man, maybe this isn't for me, because I remember seeing some people that just seem to get stuff. But after talking with them, like, sometimes they would be like, oh, I didn't know any of this beforehand. But then talking with them, they're like, oh, well, I did take a couple computer science classes in college, or, my brother's a dev and he taught me some stuff, So don't compare yourself to anyone. And I feel like I'm kind of proof of you can come from zero knowledge. And now going back to your question, I love the company that I'm working for, Dialexa. We just write custom software for whoever needs it, right? So currently I'm working on a project doing front end work in React. And
Nice.
So, yeah, it's really fun. I'm working remote from Idaho. And so there's so many different pros of this industry that are awesome that I never would have been able to experience if I had thought, if I'd listened to those fears, and just said, like, I'm not smart like these other people, I can't do it. Because going back to the question before that I don't think I answered, I don't think I was probably in like the top 50%. Like, I was in probably the bottom half of knowledge in my boot camp, because it was just so much new stuff. And again, I felt like I understood the concepts, but being able to put it to code was really hard. So for any new campers that are struggling, like, please be patient. If this is what you want, if it's not what you want, that's totally fine, right? Like, to each
So
their
let
own.
me share my personal story around that then. I think that's going to resonate
please do.
well. So as I have a computer science degree from way back then in France. Joined Microsoft pretty quickly after graduating, a couple of years later. But then rapidly at Microsoft, really left the computer science field to be in the learning space and working with, certifications, online learning. And I'll say it was probably like 10 years ago or 8 years ago. I was working on a kind of a project that was in between engineering and learning. And I was working pretty closely with the product team, the Microsoft Office product team. And I was really intrigued. And all of a sudden, I was quite interested in actually joining the computer, software space and joining that engineering organization. I was not an engineer per se. I was more as a learning person. And I really wanted to join that Microsoft Office engineering group. And I had a great relationship with them. And they said, yeah, Ludo, come over. We have a position. You're going to interview. I failed miserably. I failed. And they were very nice with me. They're like, usually we will not hire you for that position. But if you're okay to take 2 levels down, like I was certain level at Microsoft, I was a director over there. Said, if you want to join as a junior guy, we'll bring you in. I was like, man, and I could see it like in software engineering, right? In software engineering, there's the guys like me who build, websites like, newcamp.co. I kind of built it and built really interesting stuff. But then there's the guys who are building Windows, that are building, Google search, that are building the AI engine. And if you keep comparing yourself to those folks and you're not one, you're always, I mean, to your point, you're always going to find someone that's so much better than you in this game, so much better than you. It doesn't mean you're not worth it. It doesn't mean you're not going to have a great career. It doesn't mean you're not going to be successful and pleased and happy. Like, I'm super pleased where I am and what I've done. But yes, it's there's definitely different levels of expertise, of engineering. I mean, there's the engineers, I guess, who, there's engineers who can create an IKEA table, and there are engineers who can build the World Trade Center, right? Also,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
it's that kind of difference in terms of knowledge and experience, and you can't compare yourself. Otherwise, always going to find someone that's going to put you down, even if
Yeah.
they don't want to. They just, you're going to feel like you're not ready. So that's great. Henry has another question, and I think we have an answer to that. Is this bootcamp on-site, online, or both? We are 100% online at the moment. And I have a question, private chat from AJ. Great question, AJ. Actually, you can post it in the public chat, but the AJ is from the Army and wants us to look into Army Cool. And we've actually started to look into it, AJ, just so you know. We've actually heard about it, and we've heard that it was a program that we could actually qualify for. So we're looking into that. So Eric, one question I have for you, given your experience and the ups and downs and what you did to go through that, you on your third position now, am I correct, in the software engineering space?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what life is like when you are, on your third job compared to looking for your first one? How easy? I mean, what's the, if you want to share, like, how much better is it in terms of finding another job, compensation wise, without giving numbers? Maybe, I mean, how much did you grow? Can you give us an idea of of trajectory, I would say, in terms of career progression? And the context for that is getting the first position is often super hard for junior devs.
Yeah.
But I tell them, and they hear, that's the first one. If you get your first one, should be getting it's going to be easier and better afterwards. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, is it right? Is it correct? Is that what you've experienced?
Yeah. So just as far as like having job security in the industry, obviously starting out and you haven't had any work in the dev world, that first job is really, really tough.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like once you've been a dev for at least a year, and in my experience, you get recruiters just trying to knock down your door, trying to get you to go work in every area of the world. I get messages from everywhere saying, hey, come work for us in X place, Y place, whatever, right? But I
Cool.
huh?
I didn't know you could travel as well. I didn't know, you could just, decide one day to go to Europe or Asia or Africa or.
I think I got an email the other day. It was like, oh, it wasn't Switzerland. It was someplace over there in Europe. And I would, if I was single, I would totally take it. But like, I can't go with my wife, and we've got our dog and everything. Got to be responsible. But no, after your first job, after your first year, I feel like you're gold. So
it's 1 year, pretty much 1 job, 1 year, and after that, you've passed the hump of
Yeah, that's been my experience. I do feel like, though, work-wise, like what I do day in and day out, it's pretty similar. Obviously, it varies from job to job, but I still feel like I'm learning like crazy. I'm having to ask questions like crazy. Like there's always like I'm Googling stuff like, and I don't think that's ever going to end, right?
No, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that like now I can whip up like a React component really fast, right?
Yeah.
But there's always little intricacies in the tools and such that you're using that you always have to look up, which is probably good because tools are always changing so fast anyways, right? You always got to go back to the docs.
Can I ask you as well, did becoming an instructor change your trajectory, like where you looked act differently from people in the industry?
That's a good I'd never actually asked anyone that I
Yeah,
worked with that question, so that's a good question, but I can't see how that would be a bad thing,
yeah.
right? Like, I think that would only add credibility to myself as a developer. So,
I mean, and we don't necessarily ask that question, so I really have no data to back that up. But in a way, once you start to teach others, you're already positioning yourself as being more senior, and also having that sense of wanting to mentor and help others. Um, can you actually let's talk about you as an instructor, and let's talk about mentorship in general. Can you tell us how mentorship had an impact on you? Like, did you find great mentors throughout that journey? And how did that impact your interest and you wanting to be an instructor? What are you seeking by being an instructor with New Camp, pretty much?
yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, I would say the biggest thing is I just love being in the environment, right?
Mm,
Like, I love helping people out, and I just love tech, I love writing code. I love problem solving. So, and especially my specific circumstance, I started right before COVID,
yeah.
right? And it was one of the only ways that I could stay social and, like, actually meet
Oh,
people,
yeah. That's right.
and so I really loved being able to talk with people online, teach people, during the weekends and stuff. Uh, and there's a rule of thirds that I've heard where you're supposed to spend a third of your time with a mentor, right? Someone who knows more than you, a third of your time with your peers, and then you should spend a third of your time teaching others. And
Huh.
that's supposed to help you out in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
One, you will learn a lot, right? With people who know more than you. Two, with people who are your peers, you actually get to apply stuff, right? And then three, with people who are learning, you get to solidify your knowledge and actually like cement the basics kind of a thing.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
So
There's a similar rule in the learning science. I will say it's 1%, 10%, and 99%. And it says that 1% of what you know is from books. Let me see. 9% is from others. 90% is on the job. So pretty
yeah,
much,
yeah,
you get the knowledge from, 1% of what you're going to be able to experience and internalize is from books. 9% you're going to grab from others. And really it's
yeah.
by doing at the end of the day that you're going to really learn.
Wait,
Um,
and another quick point about it, I love kind of like what we were talking about earlier, being hungry, right? Like really
yeah,
wanting to learn and grow your knowledge. New Camp is such an awesome place for that. There are so many people that are just like, I really want to learn this and I want to know. And I love being a part of that journey for
yeah,
other people. And I think that's one of the things I love the most because it's a fun, crazy up and down journey,
yeah.
and it's fun to help be a part of that.
So let's talk about that. So I'm putting your profile. So you've been with us, as we said, ever since we opened in Dallas. Uh, Amazing rating, 4.66 out of 3, 6, 10, 14 courses and 461 student survey. What do you enjoy teaching the most? I mean, you've actually dabbled in quite a few. You've taught our web development fundamentals. You've taught Bootstrap, React Native, React Node. You've pretty much taught everything on the full stack bootcamp. What do you enjoy teaching the most?
Ooh, uh, anything other than Redux.
So React. Well, we don't teach it anymore. It's good. It's gone
Oh,
as of
yeah,
this
that's kind
this
of
one.
yeah. Yeah, you really and that makes me really happy because I feel like so much like any new project, no one wants to work on Redux. Like,
Yeah,
and there's so many
so
other
crazy.
alternatives. I mean, if you know Redux, awesome. That's a great arrow in your quiver. But
Yeah,
yeah, I like all the different classes. If I had to pick one, React is really fun just
yeah,
because like that's the actual code that you're going to be writing
yeah.
most likely.
That's the meat of it. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, exactly. And then Node's really fun, but we don't go super in depth with it,
Yeah.
right? Like there's so much to back end that we cover a lot of it, but it's not super duper in depth because who knows what you're going to be doing professionally, so you can't
Yeah.
really pick one.
Are
But
you seeing students having that realization? And we were talking about it last week with Franklin, how some students are joining the backend, the Node.js, course after spending, most of the boot camp doing front end. Do you see some having that realization and haha moment that, oh my God, I really prefer backend? Like I realized that I hated front end and I really love backend. Do you have that? Did you get that, those students in your classes?
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. No, I've known a lot of devs that are just like, oh, this front end stuff sucks. Like
Yeah.
back end all the way. I feel like it's usually though people like the front end because you can visualize what you're writing in code pretty quickly, right? You get
Yeah.
to see the fruits of your labor. But yeah, back end is awesome. There's so many cool things you can do with it. And I feel like if you're a math brain person,
Yeah.
back end is great.
Yeah, that's right. It's super square, right? It's like a route. It's do this, use those verbs and data structure. Yeah, it's very analytical brain versus front end, which is much more creative brain.
Exactly.
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
totally. So, Eric, what are we are like almost at the end of our show, and I know you have to go pretty fast after that. What's next for you? How do you envision yourself in the next couple of years? I will say.
Oh, that's a good question. If I don't take this job in Switzerland,
Yeah,
then
that's right.
uh, that's a good question. And honestly, I've been talking with my wife quite a bit about that. I still feel like I'm still fairly new to the whole industry, and there's so many
Mhm.
different avenues, you know. Um, but I think I'd like to end up in management at some point.
Okay.
Uh, so we'll see exactly. I don't know the perfect path for that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out right now. But currently, my main focus is just being as knowledgeable as I can for the project that I'm on. So
Yeah.
I'm really trying
So
to focus.
learning and doing at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I still feel like there's so much more that I want to learn about the industry before I point in one specific direction and go that way. And I think there's so many different awesome, like you almost can't lose in any of these directions, right?
Hmm.
Whether you want to go more into management or whether you want to be like a super great
Yeah.
dev, writing code all the time. But
So you will be
anyway,
a dev manager. Yeah, it's would you still want to code even as a dev manager? Or you will, I guess you still have to code, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
pretty
yeah. No,
rare
I
that
would love,
you're
I would
gonna
love,
code.
and yeah, I always want to be writing code. I would love to be
Yeah.
doing some stuff. And honestly, maybe even like start my own SaaS company. I think
Uh-huh.
anyone who's a developer
Yeah.
always thinks like, and we always have people coming up to us like, oh, I've got this great idea for an app. Like, we're
Yeah.
gonna make millions, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, that could be in the cards as well. But
Don't you feel that's the crazy part of being, especially a full stack developer, is coming to a realization? And actually, that's our tagline on our website. If you can dream it, you can do it. That is for me so true. Realizing all of a sudden that you actually know everything you need to know to create the new Twitter, to create the new Facebook, that you actually can do it all. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of work and you're going to hire people, but you actually can create a product from scratch with your bare hands. For me, sometimes it really hits me. Do you feel that way? Like, do you feel like, hey, I could just do it?
uh yes and no. Yeah, I mean, the fact that like a lot of these things do take so much time and energy can feel overwhelming. And that's probably just like the fear speaking, right? But then
Yeah.
when I analyze it a little bit more, I'm like, I have the capability to definitely do any of these things. And like you were
Mhm.
saying, in this industry, like once you have your first job and you're kind of secure as a dev, you can, like you're saying, do anything. Like the world is for the taking kind of a thing, you know? And software is just gonna be a bigger and bigger role in everyone's lives. And so it's awesome to be a part of that.
Well, that's a great way to close this stream. Before you go, I want to remind people that we have an early bird ending on Monday. Sunday and Monday are the two biggest days for us. If you're planning to join the Full Stack Bootcamp, you want to register by the end of Monday. Otherwise, after that, the early bird rate is going to go up and you're going to miss that. So remember that. But again, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate. I know you have a friend to celebrate tonight. Say hi for me.
Thank
And
you.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you again on our Slack online. And thank everyone. Thank Henry. Thank Fernando and Alex for joining us here. Kothin, thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Ludo. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.